Some men collect stamps. My wife collects secrets. Too bad she's got no place to hide them. My name is Maxwell Thorne, and I'm a litigation attorney who's made a career out of exposing lies. Ironic, considering I've been living with the biggest liar of all for 15 years. But tonight, at our annual charity gala, that's all about to change. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Let me back up 6 months to when this whole mess started. The first sign wasn't subtle. Deena had never been one for subtlety. "Maxwell, honey," she said, adjusting her designer dress in our bedroom mirror. "You really should do something about that gut. The Hendersons are hosting tonight, and I'd hate for people to think I've let myself go by association." I looked up from my legal briefs, studying my wife of 15 years. Deena Vance-Thorne stood 5'6" in her Louboutins, blonde hair perfectly styled, makeup applied with surgical precision. At 42, she still turned heads, and she knew it. What she didn't know was that I'd been documenting every cruel comment, every backhanded insult, every public humiliation for the past year. "I'll try to stay in the shadows," I replied, not looking up from my papers. "Wouldn't want to embarrass you?" She missed the sarcasm entirely. "Exactly. You understand me so well." The Henderson party was typical for our affluent Texas suburb. Sprawling backyard, catered appetizers, and enough gossip to fuel a soap opera. Our social circle consisted of successful couples in their 40s, all playing the same game of appearances and one-upmanship. I watched Deena work the crowd like a politician. She gravitated toward the younger husbands, touching their arms when she laughed, tilting her head just so. Jason Martinez owned 3 fitness centers and had the physique to prove it. Kyle Davidson ran a luxury car dealership and drove a different sports car every week. Logan Pierce had inherited his father's construction company and built himself a lakeside mansion. "Men are always after me," Deena announced to a group of wives, loud enough for half the party to hear. "Just this morning, I had 3 different guys texting me about business opportunities." She made air quotes and giggled. The wives, Brittany Martinez, Andrea Davidson, and Lexi Pierce, laughed along, but I caught the tight smiles, the quick glances. They knew something was off. "Maxwell's so lucky," Brittany said, her voice carrying a sharp edge. "Having such a popular wife." "Oh, he doesn't mind," Deena waved dismissively. "He's too busy with his boring legal stuff to pay attention anyway. Aren't you, honey?" All eyes turned to me. I raised my beer in a mock toast. "Guilty as charged. Nothing more exciting than contract law." The group laughed, but I was already planning. In my profession, you learn to read people, to spot the tells that reveal truth from fiction. Deena was practically broadcasting her secrets. That night, I decided to investigate. I'd noticed Deena's phone habits changing over the past few months. She kept it face down during dinner, stepped outside to take calls, and had started using a passcode I didn't know. When she showered, she took the phone with her into the bathroom. The breakthrough came 2 weeks later during a routine tech issue. Our home computer was running slowly, and I was trying to clear up storage space. When I connected my phone to transfer some files, I noticed Deena's cloud account had automatically synced to the shared computer. What I found made me freeze. Message thread with Jason Martinez. "Deena, can't wait for our workout session tomorrow." Jason, "Bring that red thing you wore last time." Deena, "Maxwell's in court all day. We'll have ours." Message thread with Kyle Davidson. Kyle, "Tess drove that new Porsche today. Want to take a ride?" Deena, "Is that what we're calling it now?" Kyle, "You know what I mean? Same hotel as usual?" Message thread with Logan Pierce. Logan, "Finished the master bedroom at the lake house." Deena, "Perfect timing. I told Maxwell I'm visiting my mother this weekend." Logan, "Can't wait to christen the new bed." There were dozens more. Photos I won't describe. Videos that made me want to put my fist through the monitor. Timestamps showing months of coordination, planning, lies. But what really got me was the group chat. All four of them, Deena, Jason, Kyle, and Logan, had a private thread called The Fun Club. They shared details about their encounters, joked about their spouses, and planned their next meetings like it was a business venture. Jason, Brittany's getting suspicious. Need to cool it for a week. Deena, Maxwell's clueless. We could do it on the kitchen table and he wouldn't notice. Kyle, lucky you. Andrea's been checking my phone. Logan, that's why you always delete everything, amateur. Deena, speaking of Maxwell, he's been extra pathetic lately, trying to plan date nights and romantic dinners. It's actually sad. Jason, at least he's not trying to work out like Kyle's wife. Kyle, hey, Andrea's hot when she tries. Deena, please, none of our spouses compare to what we have. Why settle for hamburger when you can have steak? Logan, you're terrible, Deena. I love it. I sat in my home office at 2 a.m. reading through months of betrayal. My hands shook with rage, but my mind was calculating. This wasn't just adultery. This was conspiracy. They'd turned my marriage into a joke, my life into a punchline. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd betrayed a litigation attorney who specialized in high-stakes cases. I knew how to build an airtight case, how to gather evidence, and most importantly, how to destroy an opponent completely. I spent the next 2 weeks documenting everything: screenshots with timestamps, hotel receipts I found in Deena's purse, credit card statements showing purchases at Victoria's Secret on days she claimed to be shopping for the boutique. I even hired my friend Tom Bradley, a private investigator, to follow them. Tom had been my roommate in college and my best man at the wedding. He was also the only person I trusted completely. "This is bad, Max," Tom said, sliding a manila folder across my desk. "I've got photos, video, audio recordings. Your wife and her boyfriends aren't exactly discreet." I flipped through the evidence. Pictures of Deena entering hotel rooms with each man. Video of them kissing in Kyle's dealership after hours. Audio of Deena telling Jason she loved him more than she'd ever loved her boring husband. "There's more," Tom continued. "I did some digging on the three husbands. Jason's been skimming money from his gym's accounts to pay for hotel rooms. Kyle's been using dealership cars for his affairs, and Logan's been billing his construction company for the hotel expenses." "Interesting," I said, my voice steady despite the fury building inside me. "What about their wives?" "Brittany Martinez filed for a legal separation last month, but hasn't told anyone. Andrea Davidson has been seeing a therapist about her marriage, and Lexi Pierce hired a divorce attorney 3 weeks ago." The pieces were falling into place. The wives suspected, but they didn't have proof. They were probably hoping their husbands would end the affairs and come back to their families. They had no idea their husbands were part of a coordinated effort to humiliate their spouses. "Tom," I said, closing the folder, "how do you feel about helping me plan the perfect revenge?" He grinned. "I thought you'd never ask." The annual Meadowbrook Country Club charity gala was Deena's Super Bowl. She'd been planning her outfit for months, coordinating with her stylist and dropping hints about the important people who'd be attending. "This is my night, Maxwell," she said, applying her lipstick in our bedroom mirror. "The charity board is announcing the new fundraising chair, and I'm the obvious choice." I adjusted my tuxedo tie, watching her in the reflection. "Of course you are. Who else has your networking skills?" She preened at what she thought was a compliment. "Exactly. I've cultivated relationships with all the right people." If only she knew how right she was. The ballroom at Meadowbrook was decorated in gold and black, with round tables for 8 surrounding a small stage. I'd specifically requested our usual table, the one that seated Deena, myself, and the 3 couples she'd been destroying. Jason and Brittany Martinez arrived first. Jason looked uncomfortable in his rented tuxedo, constantly tugging at his bow tie. Brittany wore a stunning black dress, but her smile seemed forced. She kept glancing at her husband with suspicion. Kyle and Andrea Davidson came next. Kyle strutted in wearing what was obviously an expensive custom suit, probably paid for with dealership funds. Andrea looked exhausted, like she hadn't been sleeping well. She barely made eye contact with anyone. Logan and Lexi Pierce completed our table. Logan had the easy confidence of inherited wealth, but I noticed he avoided looking directly at Deena. Lexi seemed nervous, checking her phone constantly. "Isn't this wonderful?" Deena gushed as we took our seats. "All my favorite people in one place." I caught Tom's eye from across the room. He was positioned at the bar with a clear view of our table, pretending to nurse a whiskey while actually recording everything on his phone. The first course was served, some kind of fancy salad that cost more than most people's weekly groceries. Deena dominated the conversation, as usual. "You know, I've been getting so many compliments lately," she said, twirling her fork. "Just yesterday, the mailman said I was the most beautiful woman on the street." "The mailman?" Andrea asked dryly. "How flattering." "Oh, it's not just him," Deena continued, missing the sarcasm entirely. "Men are always after me. Text messages, phone calls, surprise visits. It's actually becoming a problem." She laughed, but the sound was too loud, too forced. Jason shifted in his seat. Kyle suddenly became very interested in his salad. Logan reached for his wine glass. "That must be difficult for Maxwell," Brittany said, her voice sharp, "having such a popular wife." "Maxwell doesn't mind," Deena waved dismissively. "He trusts me completely. Don't you, honey?" All eyes turned to me. This was the moment I'd been planning for weeks. I set down my fork and looked directly at my wife. "I do trust you, Deena. In fact, I know exactly who's been after you." Her smile faltered slightly. "What do you mean?" I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my phone, placing it face up on the table. The screen showed the group chat titled The Fun Club. "I know about Jason," I said calmly. Jason went white. Brittany's head snapped toward her husband. "I know about Kyle." Kyle dropped his fork. Andrea's mouth fell open. "And I know about Logan." Logan started to stand, but Lexi grabbed his arm, her nails digging into his sleeve. "Maxwell," Deena said, her voice shaking. "What are you talking about?" I stood up, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet table. "I'm talking about the group chat where you four coordinate your affairs. I'm talking about the hotel receipts, the secret phone calls, the lies you've been telling for months." The color drained from Deena's face. Around us, other tables were starting to notice the commotion. "I'm talking about how you called me pathetic, boring, and clueless while you were sleeping with 3 married men." "Maxwell, please," Deena whispered, looking around at the growing audience. "Not here." "No, this is perfect," I said, pulling out a business card and placing it in front of her. "Since you love public attention so much." The card read, "Patricia Williams, Divorce Mediation Services." "You'll be hearing from my attorney on Monday," I continued, "along with Jason's gym's board of directors, Kyle's dealership partners, and Logan's construction company investors." I looked at each of the wives in turn. "Ladies, check your email. I sent you some interesting reading material about 20 minutes ago." Brittany, Andrea, and Lexi simultaneously reached for their phones. The silence stretched for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Then Brittany screamed, "You bastard!" She lunged across the table at Jason, who fell backward in his chair trying to escape. 2 years? Andrea was staring at her phone in shock, tears streaming down her face. Kyle tried to grab the device, but she yanked it away. "Don't touch me," she hissed. "Don't you ever touch me again." Lexi had gone completely still, reading through the messages with surgical precision. When she finally looked up at Logan, her voice was quiet. "The lake house bedroom. That's where you've been taking her." "Lexi, I can explain." "The bed I picked out. The sheets I bought." She stood up slowly, her hands clenched into fists. "In our house." The entire ballroom was watching now. Conversations had stopped. Even the waiters had frozen in place. Deena was having a complete breakdown. "Maxwell, please, we can work this out. I made mistakes, but—" "Mistakes?" I laughed, and the sound was harsh in the silent room. "Mistakes are forgetting to pick up milk or missing an anniversary. This was a calculated campaign to humiliate me while you destroyed 3 marriages." I looked around the room at all the faces staring back at us. The social elite of our community, the people whose opinions Deena valued more than her own marriage. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, "I'd like to thank you all for attending my wife's farewell performance. She's been putting on quite a show for the past year, but unfortunately, the reviews are in, and it's closing night." I walked away from the table, leaving chaos in my wake. Behind me, I could hear Brittany screaming at Jason, Andrea sobbing, and Lexi's quiet, serious threats to Logan. But the sound I savored most was Deena's voice, high and desperate, calling my name as her perfect world collapsed around her. Tom met me at the bar, grinning widely. "That was beautiful, Max. Absolutely beautiful." "It's just the opening act," I replied, accepting the whiskey he offered. "The real show starts tomorrow." The fallout was immediate and devastating. By Sunday morning, the story had spread through our social circle like wildfire. Marcia Henderson, our neighbor and the unofficial town gossip, had witnessed the entire gala meltdown and shared every detail on the neighborhood Facebook group. "I've never seen anything like it," she posted, along with several blurry photos of the confrontation. "Deena Thorne's affairs exposed in front of everyone. 3 married men. The wives went absolutely crazy." The post had 67 comments and 42 shares by noon. I spent Sunday morning in my home office fielding calls from my attorney and reviewing the prenuptial agreement Deena had signed 15 years ago. Back then, she'd been a struggling boutique employee, and I was a junior associate at a major firm. The prenup was ironclad, especially the infidelity clause. Any extramarital affair resulting in photographic, video, or written evidence shall result in the forfeiture of all claims to marital property, I read aloud to Tom, who was helping me organize the evidence files. "Your younger self was smart," Tom said, sealing another envelope of photos. "Did you suspect she'd cheat?" "No," I admitted, "but my father always said to plan for the worst and hope for the best. Turns out he was right." Deena hadn't come home Saturday night. According to Marcia's Facebook updates, she'd been seen leaving the country club with a suitcase, heading toward her mother's house across town. My phone buzzed with a text from my attorney, Sophie Chen. "Divorce papers ready? Want me to serve them today or wait?" I typed back, "Wait, let her stew for a few days." The real entertainment was watching the 3 couples implode in real time. Jason Martinez was the first to crack. By Monday morning, Brittany had changed the locks on their house and posted photos of his belongings scattered across their front lawn. She'd also called an emergency meeting with the board of directors at his fitness centers. "Embezzlement, adultery, and using company resources for personal affairs," Tom reported, scrolling through his contacts in the business community. The board voted to remove him as CEO. Brittany's getting the house, the cars, and half the business. Kyle Davidson lasted until Tuesday. Andrea had hired the most vicious divorce attorney in the county and frozen all their joint accounts. She'd also reported the missing dealership vehicles to the police as theft. "Turns out using company cars for affairs is considered misuse of corporate property," I told Tom over lunch. "Kyle's looking at criminal charges." Logan Pierce held out until Wednesday, probably because he had the most money to lose. But Lexi was playing a longer game. She'd quietly transferred half their assets to accounts in her name and filed for divorce in a county where the judges were known for favoring wives in infidelity cases. "She's going to take him for everything," Tom said admiringly. "The lake house, the construction company, even his boat. Logan's going to be living in a studio apartment by Christmas." But the best part was watching Deena's social world collapse. Her boutique, Deena's Designs, had catered to the wives of wealthy men in our community. Women who valued discretion, class, and moral superiority. The affair scandal destroyed her client base overnight. "I'm sorry, but we can't be associated with that kind of behavior," one customer told her, according to Marcia's Facebook updates. What would people think? By Thursday, Deena had lost 12 of her 15 regular customers. By Friday, her landlord had received complaints from other tenants about the negative publicity affecting the shopping center's reputation. I was in my office reviewing case files when Sophie knocked on my door. "Your wife is here," she said, her expression carefully neutral. "She wants to talk. Send her in." Deena looked terrible. Her usually perfect hair was unwashed and pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wore jeans and a wrinkled t-shirt, clothes I'd never seen her in public before. Her makeup couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes. "Maxwell," she said, closing the door behind her. "We need to talk." "I'm listening." She sat down across from my desk, trying to compose herself. "I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but destroying my life isn't going to fix our marriage." "Our marriage?" I leaned back in my chair. "Deena, we don't have a marriage. We haven't had one for months, maybe years." "That's not true." "Really? When's the last time you said something kind to me? When's the last time you showed me any affection that wasn't for show?" She opened her mouth, then closed it, unable to answer. "I'll tell you when," I continued. "It was 3 years ago, at my father's funeral. You held my hand during the service, and for 5 minutes, I thought my wife actually cared about me." Tears started flowing down her cheeks. "Maxwell, I do care about you. I made mistakes, but stop calling them mistakes." I slammed my hand on the desk, making her jump. "You didn't accidentally fall into bed with 3 men. You didn't accidentally humiliate me in public for months. You planned it, coordinated it, and enjoyed every minute of it." "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." "No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference." I pulled out the divorce papers Sophie had prepared and slid them across the desk. "Sign these, and I'll make sure the settlement is quick and relatively painless. Fight me, and I'll drag every detail of your affairs through court for the world to see." She stared at the papers without picking them up. "What about the house? My boutique?" "Read the prenup. You get nothing except what I choose to give you out of generosity." "Maxwell, please. I have nowhere to go." "You should have thought of that before you turned our marriage into a joke." She sat in silence for several minutes, then slowly reached for a pen. Her hand shook as she signed each page. "There," she said, sliding the papers back to me. "Are you happy now?" "Happy? No. Satisfied? Getting there." She stood to leave, then turned back at the door. "You know, everyone's going to think you're pathetic for not fighting for your marriage." I smiled for the first time in days. "Deena, everyone already knows the truth. The only pathetic person in this room is the one who threw away 15 years of marriage for a few cheap thrills." She left without another word. That evening, I called Tom to celebrate. "Phase 1 complete," I said, raising a beer in my empty house. "How are our 3 friends doing?" "Jason's living in a studio apartment above his brother's pizza shop. Kyle's staying at a motel and driving a 10-year-old Honda. Logan's moved into the construction company's trailer office." "Perfect. And their wives?" "Brittany's already dating someone new, a personal trainer from Jason's old gym. Andrea's planning a vacation to Europe with the settlement money. And Lexi's thinking about running for city council." "Good for them," I said, and meant it. They deserve better than what they had. "What about Deena?" I looked around my house, our house, which suddenly felt bigger and cleaner than it had in years. Deena's about to learn that actions have consequences, and I'm just getting started. 2 weeks after the gala, Deena tried to fight back. She'd hired Mitchell Cromwell, a divorce attorney known for his aggressive tactics and expensive suits. Cromwell had a reputation for getting large settlements for wives, even in cases where they were clearly at fault. "Mr. Thorne," Cromwell said during our first meeting, "my client is willing to be reasonable. She understands she made some poor choices, but 15 years of marriage should count for something." I looked across the conference table at Deena, who was wearing a conservative navy dress and minimal makeup, obviously coached by her attorney to appear sympathetic. "What exactly are you proposing?" I asked. 50% of all marital assets, including the house, plus alimony for 5 years while she rebuilds her business. I laughed, actually laughed out loud. "You're joking." "Mr. Thorne," Cromwell continued, "Texas is a community property state. Your wife is entitled to half of everything acquired during the marriage." "Not when she violated the prenuptial agreement," Sophie interjected, sliding a copy across the table. "Section 12 clearly states that any spouse engaging in adultery forfeits all claims to marital property." Cromwell frowned as he read the document. "This prenup is 15 years old. We can argue it's no longer valid." "Good luck with that," I said, "especially when I present evidence of my wife's systematic campaign of adultery with 3 different men over an 8-month period." Deena finally spoke up. "Maxwell, you're being vindictive. I said I was sorry." "Sorry doesn't pay back the money you spent on hotels and lingerie for your boyfriends. Sorry doesn't undo the humiliation you put me through." "What humiliation?" she snapped, her mask slipping. "You barely noticed I existed." "There it is," I said quietly. "The real Deena, not the victim you're pretending to be, but the selfish, cruel woman who destroyed our marriage." The meeting ended with no agreement. Cromwell promised to fight the prenup in court, and I promised to make Deena's affairs front-page news in the legal community. But Deena wasn't done trying to salvage her reputation. 3 days later, I got a call from Tom. "You need to see this," he said. "Deena's telling people you were abusive." "What?" "She's claiming you were emotionally abusive, that the affairs were her way of escaping an unhappy marriage. Marcia Henderson is eating it up." I felt a cold fury settle in my chest. "She's lying. I know that, and you know that, but she's playing the victim card. Some people are actually feeling sorry for her." That afternoon, I drove to Marcia Henderson's house. She answered the door wearing a floral housecoat and a guilty expression. "Oh, Maxwell! I wasn't expecting—" "We need to talk, Marcia." She reluctantly invited me in, offering coffee I didn't want. Her living room was decorated with family photos and gossip magazines. "I heard you've been spreading stories about me," I said without preamble. "Well, Deena stopped by yesterday and she was so upset. Deena is a liar. She's trying to rewrite history to make herself look like a victim. But she said you never paid attention to her, that you were cold and distant." I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo from our anniversary dinner 6 months ago. "Does this look like a cold, distant husband to you?" The photo showed me presenting Deena with a diamond necklace, smiling while she barely looked up from her phone. Or this one. I scrolled to another photo from her birthday party. I was clearly trying to engage with her while she flirted with Jason Martinez in the background. Or this. A video from Christmas morning where I'd surprised her with a weekend trip to New York. She'd complained that it conflicted with her business meetings. Marcia looked uncomfortable. I didn't know. Deena had affairs with 3 married men, Marcia. She humiliated me, destroyed 3 families, and now she's trying to blame me for her choices. But she seemed so sincere. She's always been a good actress. That's how she fooled me for months. I stood to leave, then turned back. "Marcia, you have influence in this neighborhood. People listen to you. I'm asking you to stop spreading lies about me." She nodded quickly. "Of course, Maxwell. I'm sorry." By the end of the week, the tide of public opinion had shifted back in my favor. Marcia had apparently shared our conversation with her network of gossips, and the truth was spreading faster than Deena's lies. But Deena had one more card to play. On Friday evening, I was working late in my office when I heard a noise from the reception area. The building should have been empty. Sophie had left hours ago. I grabbed a paperweight from my desk and walked quietly toward the front office. The door to the file room was open, and I could see someone inside with a flashlight. "Looking for something?" I asked, flipping on the lights. Deena spun around, clutching a stack of files to her chest. She looked like a deer caught in headlights. "Maxwell, I was just breaking into my office, stealing confidential files. I needed to see what evidence you had. I have a right to know what you're planning to use against me." "Actually, you don't, and this is called breaking and entering." I pulled out my phone and started recording. For the record, it's 9:47 p.m. on Friday, October 15th. I've just caught my estranged wife, Deena Vance-Thorne, illegally entering my law office and attempting to steal confidential files. "Stop recording me! Put the files down and step away from them." She clutched them tighter. "These could ruin me." "You ruined yourself. I'm just documenting it." Security arrived 10 minutes later. I'd called them as soon as I started recording. They found Deena still holding the files, still arguing that she had a right to see them. "Ma'am, you need to come with us," the security guard said. "The building owner wants to press charges for trespassing." "Maxwell, please," Deena begged as they led her away. "Don't do this. I'm still your wife." "Not for much longer," I replied. The break-in was the final nail in Deena's coffin. By Monday morning, the story was all over social media. Marcia Henderson had posted about it on Facebook, complete with speculation about what Deena had been looking for. Cromwell called that afternoon to discuss a settlement. "My client is prepared to accept the terms of the prenuptial agreement," he said, his earlier bravado completely gone. "All terms? She keeps her personal belongings and her car. You keep everything else." "What about the boutique?" "She's closing it. Lost too many customers." I felt a moment of something that might have been pity, but it passed quickly. "And the criminal charges for breaking into my office?" "She's hoping you'll be generous and not press charges." I considered it. Deena in jail would be satisfying, but it would also make her a martyr in some people's eyes. Better to let her live with the consequences of her choices. "I won't press charges," I said finally. "But I want her out of town. If I see her at any social events, any restaurants, any place where I might run into her, the deal's off." "Understood." The divorce was finalized 3 weeks later. Deena got her clothes, her car, and a small settlement I offered out of what Sophie called misguided generosity. She moved to Dallas, where her sister lived, and disappeared from our social circle entirely. Jason, Kyle, and Logan weren't so lucky. Their divorces were messy, expensive, and very public. Jason lost his gyms and was working as a personal trainer at a chain fitness center. Kyle was selling used cars at a lot on the wrong side of town. Logan's construction company had been dissolved, and he was working as a day laborer for his former competitors. But I wasn't satisfied yet. They'd all participated in humiliating me, and they'd all gotten off too easy. It was time for the final phase of my revenge. 6 months after the divorce, I was a free man with a plan. The Meadowbrook Country Club's spring gala was approaching, the same venue where I'd exposed Deena's affairs. The event committee had asked me to give a speech about overcoming adversity, apparently thinking my divorce story was inspirational. I accepted immediately. Tom and I spent weeks preparing. He'd continued monitoring Jason, Kyle, and Logan, documenting their pathetic attempts to rebuild their lives. More importantly, he'd uncovered something interesting about their coordination with Deena. "Remember how they used to meet at that hotel downtown?" Tom said, spreading photos across my kitchen table. I got curious about how they paid for the rooms. "And?" "Jason used his gym's corporate credit card. Kyle charged it to the dealership's entertainment budget. Logan billed it to his construction company as client meetings. I studied the receipts and invoices. They committed fraud. Gets better. I talked to a friend at the IRS. None of them reported these expenses properly on their tax returns. They're looking at tax evasion charges. How long do we have before the statute of limitations runs out? 8 months for the tax stuff. But here's the beautiful part. I found out they're all working together again. I looked up sharply. What do you mean? Tom grinned and pulled out his phone, showing me a photo of the 3 men sitting at a bar together. They're planning some kind of revenge against you. Apparently they blame you for ruining their lives. Of course they do. It couldn't possibly be their own fault. Jason's been telling people you set them up, that the whole thing was a trap. Kyle's claiming you hacked Deena's phone to get the evidence, and Logan's spreading rumors that you hired prostitutes to seduce them. I felt the familiar cold anger settling in my chest. They want to play games? Let's play games. The spring gala was held on a Saturday night in May. I arrived alone, wearing my best tuxedo and a smile that didn't reach my eyes. The ballroom was packed with the same crowd that had witnessed Deena's downfall 6 months earlier. I worked the room like a politician, shaking hands, making small talk, and positioning myself for maximum impact. Several people congratulated me on handling the situation with such dignity. Maxwell's been an inspiration to all of us, Marcia Henderson gushed to a group of wives, showing such grace under pressure. What they didn't know was that Tom was positioned outside the country club with a laptop, ready to execute the final phase of our plan. At 9 p.m., I took the stage to give my speech. Ladies and gentlemen, I began. 6 months ago, I stood in this same room and learned that my wife of 15 years had been having affairs with 3 men I considered friends. The room fell silent. Everyone remembered that night. Tonight, I want to talk about justice, consequences, and the importance of truth. I clicked a remote, and a large screen descended behind me. The first image showed Jason Martinez's corporate credit card statements, with hotel charges highlighted in red. Jason Martinez used his fitness center's corporate funds to pay for hotel rooms where he met my wife. That's embezzlement. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I clicked again. Kyle Davidson charged his affairs to his car dealership as entertainment expenses and deducted them from his taxes. That's fraud. Another click. Logan Pierce billed his construction company for hotel rooms where he met my wife, claiming they were client meetings. Then he wrote them off as business expenses. That's tax evasion. The room was completely silent now. I could see Jason, Kyle, and Logan at a table near the back, their faces white with shock. But here's the really interesting part, I continued, clicking to the next slide. All 3 men are currently working together at Davidson Used Cars, planning what they call Operation Payback against me. The screen showed photos Tom had taken of the 3 men meeting, along with audio transcripts of their conversations about getting revenge on me. They blame me for the consequences of their own actions. They've been telling people I set them up, that I'm the real villain in this story. I walked to the front of the stage, looking directly at their table. Gentlemen, would you like to respond to these allegations? Jason started to stand, but Kyle grabbed his arm and pulled him back down. Logan was staring at his phone, probably realizing that their revenge plans were now public knowledge. No? Well, let me continue. I clicked to the final slide, which showed IRS investigation notices. As of this morning, all 3 men are under federal investigation for tax evasion and fraud. The evidence has been turned over to the appropriate authorities. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. I raised my hand for silence. I want everyone to understand something. I didn't destroy these men's lives. I didn't force them to have affairs, steal money, or commit fraud. I simply documented their choices and let the truth speak for itself. I looked around the room at all the faces staring back at me. 6 months ago, I was humiliated in this room by people I trusted. Tonight, I want you all to see what real justice looks like." I stepped away from the microphone and walked off the stage. Behind me, chaos erupted as people rushed to confront Jason, Kyle, and Logan. Tom met me at the bar, grinning widely. "That was perfect, Max. Absolutely perfect." "It's not over yet," I said, accepting the whiskey he offered. "They'll try to run." "Already covered. I've got friends watching all three of them. If they try to leave town, we'll know." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You bastard, this isn't over." I showed the message to Tom. "Jason?" "Probably. He always was the hothead of the group." "Good. I was hoping they'd try something stupid." We didn't have to wait long. At 11 p.m., as the gala was winding down, Tom got a call from one of his contacts. "They're at Maxwell's house," he said, hanging up. "All three of them, drunk and angry." I smiled and finished my whiskey. "Perfect. Let's go give them a proper welcome." My house was dark when we arrived, but I could see 3 figures stumbling around my front yard. Jason was trying to climb over my fence, Kyle was throwing rocks at my windows, and Logan was urinating on my rose bushes. "Classy," Tom muttered, pulling out his phone to record. "Real classy." I parked across the street and called 911, reporting 3 intoxicated men trespassing on my property. Then I activated my home security system, which would record everything and automatically alert my neighbors. "Maxwell!" Jason shouted when he saw my car. "Get out here, you coward!" I stepped out of the car, keeping my distance. "Gentlemen, you're trespassing on private property. I suggest you leave before the police arrive." "Screw you!" Kyle slurred, throwing another rock that shattered my front window. "You ruined our lives!" "You ruined your own lives," I replied calmly. "I just documented it." Logan stumbled toward me, his fists raised. "You think you're so smart, don't you? Setting us up, destroying our marriages?" "I didn't set you up. You walked into your own trap." Jason had finally made it over the fence and was advancing on me from the other side. "We should have kicked your ass months ago." 3 against 1? I shook my head. "That sounds about right for you cowards." That did it. Jason charged first, swinging wildly. I sidestepped easily. He was drunk and uncoordinated. He stumbled past me and crashed into Kyle, sending them both sprawling onto my lawn. Logan tried to grab me from behind, but I spun around and shoved him hard. He fell backward into my fountain, soaking himself and howling with rage. "Is that the best you can do?" I taunted. "No wonder your wives left you for better men." Kyle got to his feet and pulled out a tire iron from his car. "I'm going to bash your skull in." "With what? That rusty piece of junk? You can't even run a car dealership without stealing from it." He swung the tire iron at my head. I ducked and grabbed a garden hose, turning it on full blast and hitting him in the face. He dropped the weapon and fell backward, gasping and sputtering. Jason was back on his feet, but he was weaving dangerously. "You destroyed everything. My business, my marriage, my life." "You destroyed your own business when you started embezzling money for hotel rooms. You destroyed your own marriage when you decided to cheat. I just made sure everyone knew about it." He threw a wild punch that I easily avoided. His momentum carried him forward, and I stuck out my foot. He tripped and went face first into my mailbox, cutting his forehead and howling in pain. Logan was climbing out of the fountain, dripping wet and furious. "We're going to ruin you." "Really? Because so far, you've managed to break my window, water my lawn, and provide entertainment for my neighbors." I gestured to the houses around us, where lights were coming on and people were watching from their windows. Several neighbors were recording with their phones. "Say hello to social media, boys. This is going to be all over Facebook by morning." Kyle tried to charge me again, but he slipped on the wet grass and slid into my hedge. Jason was still bleeding from his encounter with the mailbox, and Logan was shivering in his soaked clothes. "Had enough?" I asked. "Or do you want to embarrass yourselves even more?" In the distance, I could hear sirens approaching. The police were almost here. "This isn't over," Jason snarled, holding his bleeding head. "Yes, it is," I said firmly. You three are going to jail tonight for trespassing, vandalism, and assault. Tomorrow, you'll be front-page news again, and next week you'll be in federal court facing fraud charges." The police cars pulled up, their red and blue lights illuminating the scene. 3 officers got out, taking in the destruction: my broken window, the 3 drunk men on my lawn, and me standing calmly in the middle of it all. "These men broke into my property and attacked me," I told the lead officer, a sergeant I recognized from court cases. "I have everything on security camera." "Maxwell Thorne," the sergeant said, recognizing me. "The lawyer?" "That's right. These are the 3 men who were having affairs with my wife. They've been planning revenge against me for months." Jason, Kyle, and Logan were handcuffed and loaded into police cars. As they drove away, I surveyed the damage to my property: 1 broken window, some trampled flowers, and a lot of wet grass. Tom clapped me on the shoulder. "Well, that was anticlimactic. I was expecting more of a fight." "They're not fighters," I said, watching the police cars disappear. "They're cowards who pick on people they think won't fight back." "What happens now?" I looked around at my neighbors, who were still watching from their windows and doorways. Tomorrow the story would be all over town. The 3 men who'd destroyed their marriages and stolen from their businesses had drunkenly attacked the man who'd exposed their crimes. Now they face the consequences, I said. Real consequences this time. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. The story of the late-night attack had already made the local news, complete with cell phone footage from my neighbors. 3 local businessmen arrested in revenge attack, read the headline in the morning paper. Jason, Kyle, and Logan were each facing multiple charges: trespassing, vandalism, assault, and public intoxication. Their federal tax evasion cases were still pending, and now they had criminal records to add to their problems. But the best part was the public reaction. The same people who might have felt sorry for them now saw them as dangerous criminals who attacked innocent people in their own homes. I sat in my kitchen drinking coffee and reading the news coverage when my phone rang. It was Sophie, my legal assistant. "Maxwell, I just wanted to congratulate you," she said. "You've completely destroyed them without breaking a single law." "They destroyed themselves," I corrected. "I just made sure everyone could see it." "What about Deena? Have you heard from her?" I looked at my phone, which showed a text message from my ex-wife that had arrived at 6 a.m. "I saw the news. I'm sorry for everything. You didn't deserve what we did to you." "She texted me this morning," I told Sophie. "Too little, too late." "Are you going to respond?" I deleted the message without reading it again. There's nothing left to say. That afternoon, I drove to the country club to assess the damage to my reputation. I needn't have worried. The same people who had witnessed my humiliation 6 months ago now treated me like a hero. "Maxwell!" Marcia Henderson called out as I walked through the lobby. "I saw the news! Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Marcia. Just some broken glass and wounded pride." "Those men should be ashamed of themselves," she said, shaking her head. "Attacking you in your own home after what they did to you." I spent an hour at the club, accepting congratulations and sympathy from people who had once pitied me. The transformation was complete. I was no longer the cuckolded husband, but the wronged man who had stood up for himself. As I drove home that evening, I reflected on the past year of my life. 12 months ago, I had been married to a woman who despised me, surrounded by friends who were betraying me and living a lie that everyone could see except me. Now I was free. Deena was gone, living in exile in Dallas. Jason, Kyle, and Logan were facing federal charges and social ostracism. Their wives had moved on to better lives, and I had reclaimed my dignity. I pulled into my driveway and looked at my house now, not ours. The broken window had already been repaired, the lawn had been cleaned up, and there was no sign of the previous night's drama. Inside, I poured myself a whiskey and sat in my living room, enjoying the silence. No cruel comments, no backhanded insults, no walking on eggshells around someone who was supposed to love me. My phone buzzed with a text from Tom. "Drinks tomorrow to celebrate?" I typed back, "Absolutely. We've earned it." As I sat there in my quiet house, I realized something important. Revenge wasn't about hurting the people who had hurt me. It was about making sure they faced the consequences of their actions and ensuring that justice was served. Deena had wanted excitement, attention, and admiration. Now she had notoriety, isolation, and regret. Jason, Kyle, and Logan had wanted to have their affairs and keep their comfortable lives. Now they had criminal records, failed businesses, and destroyed reputations. They had all gotten exactly what they deserved. I raised my glass in a silent toast to my new life, then settled back in my chair to enjoy the peace and quiet of a house that was finally, truly mine. Justice had been served, and it tasted better than I had ever imagined.